this module, or in section B of module 35, we're going to continue to look at strategies we can use to problem solve, but pay attention to how our judgments can oftentimes hinder our problem solving abilities. So the first term I'm going to discuss, even though I know we already looked at it in class, is this problem solving strategy known as the representative heuristic. And this strategy, what we use is a prototype to predict the likelihood of an event. So we talked about this in class as related to the Oklahoma City bombing in April of 1995, where a bomb was detonated in the garage of a federal building in Oklahoma City, and the bomb exploded and killed about 168 people. Remember, some of those 168 people were children who were in a daycare for the federal employees at the building. So a lot of times when I ask students this question and I say, okay, who do you think detonated the bomb? A lot of them tend to pick this man in the left-hand corner of the screen, when in fact it was actually the man on the right. And the reason why people tend to answer this question incorrectly is because of the representative heuristic, because they're using a prototype that doesn't fit appropriately in this situation. So for someone of my age, when I think about bombings and when I think about terrorist attacks, I think of first and foremost September 11th. September 11th, the terrorists that went on the airplanes and hijacked them and caused them to dive into the Twin Towers were all Middle Eastern men that were part of the Islamic extremist group Al Qaeda. So I think of these men, they are my prototype when I'm trying to figure out, okay, who committed this terrorist attack in Oklahoma City. And then I also think about the two brothers who detonated bombs at the Boston Marathon. They were Chechnyan immigrants who were also connected to a terrorist organization. So this group of men is my prototype, and that's why I tend to think, oh, it's probably the man on the left because he looks like those men. He's of Albanian descent, as compared to the man on the right who actually committed the bombings. And his name was Timothy McVeigh. He was a white man and actually a former veteran. So I answer this question incorrectly because my prototype doesn't match up with the actual terrorist who committed this atrocious act. And again, that's an example of the representative heuristic playing out. Another term that can cause us to not problem solve appropriately is what we call the availability heuristic. That's when we predict the likelihood of events based on how available that event is in our memory or how often we're hearing about that specific event, maybe in the media, in the news, and so on. So to give you an example of this, some people have a very large fear of flying and getting on an airplane. And the reason why a lot of people have this fear is because they're afraid that the plane is going to crash and they may die or get injured and so on. However, okay, if you look at the statistics, your chance of dying in a motor vehicle accident is much higher than you actually dying in an airplane crash. But for whatever reason, people have this idea, I'm more likely to die on an airplane than I am in my own car. And the reason why sometimes we have this fear is because of this concept, the availability heuristic. Car accidents are occurring all the time in our town, in our state, in our country, but you don't hear them or hear about them as much, maybe per se on the news or in social media, because when an airplane accident happens, the news tends to focus on that because that's less common than maybe a car accident. So because you're hearing about airplane accidents occurring more often in the news and social media, you think you're more likely to die in one, when in fact that's not true. So news and media has a big role in the availability heuristic playing out. Another type of judgment that can cause you to not problem solve appropriately is overconfidence. So, for example, if you're going into this quest that we're going to have on Friday and you think, oh, yeah, I know everything I don't need to study, and then you don't review your terms before the test, that could obviously cause you to do poorly on the test. So, it's good to be confident, but you don't want to be so confident that you're not taking the appropriate steps to prepare yourself for an event, in this case, a test. Another strategy that can sometimes hinder you is what we call belief perseverance. Belief perseverance is when you hold on to a conception you may have about something, even when someone presents evidence to you that discredits or contradicts your original conception. So, for example, let's say you tell me, Miss Cleary, I've had it, I'm done, I am dropping out of high school. And I may say to you, please don't drop out of high school. Here are some statistics that show you your life could become more difficult if you don't get your diploma. And I could talk about how you're less likely to get a job if you don't have a high school degree. You're going to make less money if you don't have a high school degree, and so on. Despite me giving you that information and giving you that statistics, if you still believe that you're going to be able to drop out of high school and make a lot of money because you're comparing it to maybe to some celebrities that dropped out of high school and are very successful, and you're completely ignoring the statistics that I'm giving you, that's belief perseverance. You saying to me, no, Miss Clary, those statistics cannot possibly be true because look at Giselle. Okay, Giselle never graduated high school. She had a very successful modeling career. She's married to Tom Brady. He's now won 6 Super Bowls. There's no way that I can't be successful, okay, like Giselle, even if I drop out of high school. Or talking about Drake or Johnny Depp or Harry Potter, whomever it may be. So you're rejecting this evidence and holding on to your conception that I can drop out of high school, I'm going to be okay. And then another problem-solving strategy that can sometimes hinder people is what we call framing. Framing is often used in advertisements, and the people of the advertisements will frame information in a certain way or pose it to you in a certain way. So maybe you cling to it or you believe it more so than if the information is presented in another method or mode. So, for example, if you look at some of these bullet points, these are all examples of what we call framing. So consumers are more likely to buy beef that's labeled as 75% lean rather than 25% fat, when in fact, either type of meat using either type of label has the same amount of fat. Or some people, for example, will be more likely to buy a coat that's $100 but was originally priced as $150 as compared to something that's just priced straight at $100, because it makes them think they're getting a better discount when at the end of the day, they're still going to have to pay $100 for the jacket. So the way you pose or frame information can impact how you react to it. And then the final term that sometimes can hinder our judgment is what we call intuition. And intuition is when you are just kind of relying on a gut feeling to make a decision. You're not looking at facts, you're not looking at statistics, kind of flying at the seat of your pants. Sometimes our gut reaction can be correct, but sometimes it can also hinder our judgment as well. So putting it all together, these are, again, some more examples of how sometimes problem-solving strategies can hinder our ability to appropriately answer a question.